A silver coin hit the saloon table with a clang sharp enough to silence the room. "He eats too much anyway," his father slurred, eyes glassy with rotgut. The boy stood barefoot by the door, ribs showing, hands trembling. No one moved, except one man, tall and still, who rose from the corner. He took the coin, looked the boy over, then knelt and said, "You are mine now. And you will not go hungry again." The father stumbled out. The boy stayed. Silent. Watching. Breathing hope for the first time. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. My name is Eli. I was born behind a saloon in Dry Hollow, Nevada Territory, in the last breath of summer. Folk said my mama died bringing me into this world. Some said it was sorrow that took her. Others said it was the whiskey she drank to dull the hurt. But I never knew her. Not her voice, not her scent, not the way her arms might have felt wrapped around me. What I did know was the sound of glass shattering at midnight. The sting of leather across my back. The smell of sweat and whiskey and the sour breath of a man too broken to love. My father was a gambler, and not a good one. When he lost, he blamed the world. When he won, he drank the winnings dry. I was his burden. A mouth to feed. A shadow he could not shake. I learned early how to go unseen. I slept behind whiskey barrels, under broken tables, in alleyways thick with horse dung. I would steal biscuits from the saloon kitchen and hide behind crates to eat them, quiet as a mouse. One time, Miss Greta, the saloon madam, saw me take a crust. She just nodded. I think she pitied me. But pity is not love, and it is not enough to keep a boy warm at night. The winters were cruel in Dry Hollow. Wind bit through the cracks in the walls, and snow settled like ash on the rooftops. One night, I nearly froze in the back of a wagon. I would have, too, if an old prospector had not tossed his coat over me and grumbled, "Even rats get cold." I did not cry much. Not after age 5. Tears made my father angrier. "What are you, a girl?" he would yell. I learned silence. I wore it like armor. But I watched. I watched the ranchers come to town with their strong horses and tired eyes. I watched the women hang laundry on lines, their hands cracked from soap and cold. I watched other boys with mothers who wiped their noses and fathers who tossed them in the air. I kept those pictures in my mind like prayers. One Sunday, when I was about 9, my father lost big. He threw his chair at the dealer and swore the cards were cursed. He did not have the cash to pay, but he had something else. Me. He dragged me by the arm into the saloon, his boots loud and his breath heavy. "This boy's strong," he said, slapping my back so hard my knees buckled. "Can muck stables, haul buckets, whatever. I'll trade him for my debt." Laughter bubbled up from the shadows. Someone spat. Then, one man stood. He did not laugh. Did not spit. Did not look away. His name was Silas Boone. He was a cattleman. Tall. Quiet. Wore a worn hat low over his eyes and had hands like carved wood. Folk said he once took a bullet in his shoulder and dug it out himself. Silas stepped forward, flipped a silver coin onto the table, and said, "You are paid." My father took the coin. That was all it took. One coin to unmake a bond of blood. He did not look at me again. Just staggered out the saloon door like I had never been his. I stood there, frozen. My throat burned. My chest felt hollow. I was not even worth a goodbye. Then Silas turned to me and knelt down slow. "You will not be hungry again," he said. "Not while I breathe." He took my hand. His grip was firm, but not cruel. That night, I rode with him out of town on a buckskin mare. I did not speak. I did not cry. I just looked back at Dry Hollow as it shrank behind us, until even the saloon lights were swallowed by the dark. His ranch sat on a stretch of land called Widow's Reach, 10 miles of open sky, sagebrush, and quiet. No women lived there. No children. Just Silas, 2 horses, and the wind. He showed me to a cot near the hearth and gave me a wool blanket. I lay there stiff as a board, afraid to sleep. Afraid it would all vanish. But the fire crackled soft. And Silas sat nearby, mending a saddle strap in silence. I did not know it then, but that was the first time I slept safe. The days that followed were quiet and strange. I mucked stalls. Carried buckets. Fed chickens. Silas never yelled. Never hit. He just nodded if I did something right. Grunted if I did not. At first, I flinched at every loud sound. Waited for fists. But they never came. One morning, he handed me a piece of jerky and said, "You can stay. Long as you pull your weight." I nodded. But inside, something cracked open. Like maybe, just maybe, I belonged. I woke with the sun and worked until it disappeared behind the hills. That was the rule at Widow's Reach: no wasted light, no wasted hands. Silas never said much. He pointed to what needed doing and watched if I did it right. When I did, he gave a single nod. When I messed up, he did not scold, just took over and showed me again. The silence between us was thick, but not cruel. It felt like a heavy blanket on a cold night, strange at first, but warming if you let it. I shoveled manure, fetched water, gathered eggs, and cleaned the horses' hooves. I learned fast. Not because I feared punishment, but because I feared being sent away. I still had the habit of flinching. If Silas stepped too close, I tensed. If a pan clanged or a door slammed, my heart jumped. He noticed. I know he did. But he never asked why. Instead, he gave me space. I slept in the same cot near the hearth, the wool blanket pulled tight under my chin. The first week, I slept with one eye open. By the second week, I was too tired to keep watch. And by the third, I was dreaming again. Soft dreams, of horses, of warm bread, of a voice I imagined could have been my mother's. But even dreams could not keep out the doubt. I did not know what I was to him. A worker? A debt he had paid? A stray he took in because he felt sorry? Some nights, I stared at the rafters and whispered, "What am I doing here?" Silas never answered. But the next day, he always gave me another chore. Another sign I belonged. It was not kindness like a mother's. It was not affection like a father's. But it was steadiness. And that was something. The townspeople of Dry Hollow gossiped about us. When we rode in for supplies, I saw the way they looked at me. A scrawny, wild-eyed boy trailing behind a man of few words. Miss Greta once stopped us on the boardwalk and asked, "Silas Boone, that the same boy Jack Turner sold off?" He nodded. "It is." She looked at me, long and slow. Poor thing. He still got that haunted look. Silas just said, "He will grow out of it." He said it like a fact. Like he believed it. That night, I chopped wood until my arms shook. Not because he asked me to. But because I wanted to prove him right. Winter was coming. The wind grew sharper. The sky turned to pewter. We patched the roof and stacked firewood high. Silas gave me a pair of boots lined with rabbit fur. Said nothing as he set them by my cot. I stared at them a long time before slipping them on. They fit. Not perfectly, but close enough to feel like a gift. One morning, I slipped on the ice and cracked my elbow on the wellstone. Tried to hide it, but the swelling was hard to miss. Silas grumbled, "Ought to wrap that." He pulled a clean cloth from the cupboard, soaked it in something bitter-smelling, and wrapped my arms slow and careful. I bit my lip the whole time. Not from pain, but because no one had touched me gently in years. That night, I cried silent tears into my pillow. Not because I was hurt, but because I was healing, and that hurt more. The loneliness did not vanish all at once. It hung around like smoke, clinging to the corners of my heart. Some days, I longed for words, real ones. Not grunts or nods. Not commands or chores. But Silas was a man carved from stone. And stone did not speak without reason. Then came the day Clara arrived. But that, well, that is a story for what came next. The first time I saw Clara, I was hauling buckets from the well with both hands wrapped tight around the iron handles. It was a cold spring morning. The kind where your breath curls like smoke, and your fingers go numb no matter how fast you work. I heard her before I saw her, a light voice, clear as birdsong, asking Silas if he had any beef to trade for her cheese. She came riding a sorrel mare, side-saddled and upright like she had been born with dignity stitched into her bones. She wore a bonnet the color of dried lavender and had a basket slung over her arm, filled with wax-wrapped cheese wheels and folded linens. Silas said, "Eli, take the pail inside." I nodded, but my eyes stayed on her. She turned her gaze on me. Kind. Curious. Not pitying. I had seen that look before on women in town, like they were trying to measure how much damage had been done. But Clara's eyes were different. They looked like she saw something left to save. She asked, "Is he your boy?" Silas did not answer right away. He scratched his beard, then said, "He stays with me." She smiled at that. "Seems like he is in good hands." Silas gave a small grunt. Which, from him, was a full sentence. They traded, her cheese and cloth for our salted beef and eggs. I kept my head down and listened. Clara laughed easy. Said she lived near the edge of Willow Bend, raised goats, and taught letters to neighbor children on Sundays. Before she rode off, she turned to me and said, "You have strong arms. You help around here?" I nodded once. Good. Boys who work with their hands grow into men who know their worth. Then she tipped her bonnet and rode off down the dirt path, wheels of cheese bouncing in her basket. I stood there, unsure if I had just met a stranger or someone I might remember forever. Clara came back a week later. This time with honey and 2 books tied in ribbon. Said she was passing through. But I did not believe her. Silas invited her to stay for stew. She sat at our rough-hewn table and told stories about a goat that got stuck in her chimney. I laughed, quiet at first, then full when she made the goat's bleating sound. Even Silas cracked a smile, which was something rare and worth remembering. After supper, she handed me the books. One was a Bible. The other was a thin tale book with a green cover, The Boy Who Found the Wind. She said, "I can teach you to read it if you like." My hands trembled as I took them. No one had ever given me anything like that. No coins. No gifts. No promises. Only bruises and scraps. Clara smelled like soap and cinnamon. Like comfort. The next Sunday, she brought a primer and sat with me at the table. We started with the alphabet. My tongue tripped on sounds, but she never laughed. She just smiled and said, "Try again, Eli. You are not broken. You are just learning." Silas watched from the corner, mending a bridle. Every week after, she came back. Sometimes with preserves. Sometimes with poems. She brought sunlight with her, even on cloudy days. One afternoon, I was brushing the mare when she reached to tuck a loose curl behind my ear. I flinched. I did not mean to, but the old fear still lived in my bones. She froze. "I am sorry," she said, pulling her hand back. "I should not have done that." I shook my head. It is not you. She knelt down to my eye level. You have been hurt, she whispered. That much is plain. But you are safe now. And no one will touch you without kindness. I could not answer. My throat was tight. My chest felt like it might split open from the inside. That night, I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, I want her to stay. I did not even know what that meant, only that when Clara came, the house felt warmer. The silence felt softer. And I felt less alone. Silas did not say much about her visits, but one evening, I caught him wiping the table twice, real slow, before she arrived. I think he wanted her to stay too. One Sunday, after she had taught me to sound out the word freedom, she said something that stuck. You are not just a boy someone gave away, Eli. You are a boy someone chose. I looked at Silas. He was sharpening a blade, pretending not to hear. But I think he heard every word. That was the first time I felt like I might have a place in this world that was not just survival. Not just getting through another day. But maybe, just maybe, belonging. Clara became a rhythm. Like sunrise. Like the creak of the porch step or the smell of stew after chores. She came every Sunday with her baskets and her soft voice, and over time, the house began to remember laughter. But even the sun has shadows. And not all hearts heal without protest. Clara brought out something in me I was not ready to name. Longing. Fear. The kind of ache that said, what if I lose this too? One Sunday, she brought a chessboard carved from walnut. Said her father taught her to play when she was 7. She showed me how the pieces moved. The knight, the rook, the king that ran while the queen stood her ground. You protect your heart like a king, she said to me, smiling. But sometimes, the queen has to fight for you. I did not understand it all, but I liked the sound of her voice when she said it. That night, I stayed up placing the pieces back in their squares, wondering who would protect someone like me. Silas watched Clara from behind quiet eyes. He was never a man to say much, but I could feel the change in the air. He poured coffee slower when she stayed longer. He wiped the table twice before dinner. He wore his cleanest shirt on Sundays, still dusty, but tucked in. And Clara? She never said a word about it. But she brought more food. Stayed past dusk. Once, she sang a hymn while stirring stew. I caught Silas leaning in the doorway, not blinking. The tension came slow, like rain seeping through a roof you thought was sound. One morning, I caught Silas staring at Clara's bonnet left on a hook. His fingers grazed the ribbon. Later that day, he handed me an old silver comb. Said it was his mother's. Give this to Clara, he muttered. If she wants it. I took it. My heart felt funny, tight and uncertain. Why was I afraid to give her a gift? Why did I care if she liked it? When I handed her the comb, she looked surprised. Then her eyes got soft. Did you pick this, Eli? She asked. No, sir, ma'am. Silas did. Something in her smile cracked, just a little. I see, she whispered. She ran her thumb over the comb's silver teeth, then set it gently in her lap. That evening, after she rode off, Silas sat on the porch longer than usual. He said nothing. But something between them had changed. The next week, she came later than usual. Said she had been helping her neighbor deliver a calf. But her hands shook a little when she passed me the reading book. We read slower that day. Silas did not sit nearby. After supper, Clara reached for my hair again, to brush away a leaf caught in it. I did not flinch this time. She paused. Looked in my eyes. Do you trust me now? She asked. I nodded. She smiled, but it was tired. Like she was holding something in. Later, I asked Silas why she seemed different. He grunted. Then said, "Not everyone stays, Eli. Sometimes, folks get scared." Of what? Of getting close. I did not sleep well that night. My heart pounded with questions I could not name. What if she left? What if Silas pushed her away? What if I went back to being just a boy on a cot with no books and no voice? That fear began to gnaw at me. One day, Clara did not come. Not Sunday. Not Monday. Not even Tuesday. Silas said nothing. I asked nothing. But each hour stretched like a wire between us, pulling tighter. On the third day, Silas saddled his horse. "Watch the chickens," he said. "I will be back by nightfall." He came back with dust on his boots and a look on his face I could not read. Clara returned the next Sunday, but something had shifted. She wore a bonnet I had never seen. Spoke softer. Kept her distance from Silas. But with me, she was the same. She handed me a new book, Tom Sawyer, and said, "You are ready for bigger adventures." I smiled, but my chest ached. After she left, Silas stood in the doorway and said, "Boy, what do you think of her?" I swallowed hard. "She makes things feel better." He nodded once. "Me too." That was the most he had ever said about her. I stood there, staring at the door she had gone through, wondering how something so good could still feel like it was slipping through our fingers. Because we were not used to good things. Not Silas. Not me. And maybe not Clara either. Have you ever loved something so much, you were afraid it would leave you? Tell me in the comments below. Spring deepened. The snow melted from the rooftops. Shoots of green pushed up from the dirt like quiet hope. Clara kept coming. Slowly, the walls we had all built began to show their cracks. She started bringing fresh bread. Warm, soft, with a crust that flaked just right. She would hum while slicing it, her voice filling corners of the house untouched by joy for years. One afternoon, I came inside with a cut on my hand. A wire fence had snagged me while I was fixing the chicken coop. Blood ran down my wrist. Not deep, but more than I could hide. Clara took my hand gently. Washed it in warm water. Wrapped it in clean cloth. Her fingers were sure and soft. Her eyes were steady on mine. "You do not have to be tough every moment, Eli," she whispered. "You are allowed to be cared for." My throat closed up. No one had ever said that to me before. I nodded, afraid my voice would crack if I tried to speak. After she left, Silas said, "She was not wrong." I looked up, surprised. He added, "It is all right to lean. Sometimes, even a strong post needs a brace." That night, I wrote my first full sentence in the back of the tale book she gave me. "I do not want to leave this place." Each word shook, but it was mine. The next Sunday, Clara stayed late. The sky turned a golden gray, and Silas lit the oil lamp without a word. We played 3 games of chess. I lost all of them, but Clara smiled at how long I held the queen. She said, "You are learning to protect more than yourself." After the games, we sat in the quiet. Silas finally spoke. "I want to ask you something, Clara." She looked up, startled. "All right. Do you want to stay for supper every Sunday? Not just to trade, but to be here." Clara looked at him. Then at me. "I do," she said, voice low. "I want to stay." Silas nodded once, as if it were settled. And for the first time, I saw something different in him. Not just the quiet man who paid for me with a coin. Not just the rancher who taught me to ride. But someone who could hope again. From that night on, Clara was not just a visitor. She brought linens to mend the chairs, flowers for the table, soap she made herself. She started teaching me how to cook, showing me how to tell when bread dough is ready by the feel, not just the clock. She even sang while we worked. Hymns. Folk songs. A lullaby about rivers and stars. Once, I asked her to sing it again. She did, stroking my hair like I was something precious. And I let her. Because I wanted it. Needed it. One evening, after supper, she brought out a worn piece of paper and placed it in front of me. It was a family recipe. Her mother's handwriting, faded but strong. She said, "This is yours now." I did not know what to say. So I said, "Why?" Clara reached across the table and touched my hand. "Because you are family now, Eli. If you will have me." I could not breathe for a second. My chest swelled so big, I thought I might cry. But I did not cry. I nodded, gripping that paper like it was a deed to land I had always dreamed of but never believed I could own. That night, I laid awake staring at the rafters. I thought about what it meant to belong. To be chosen, not bought. Not pitted. But wanted. Clara and Silas were not perfect. They did not always speak easy. But they made space for me, day by day. Like rain carving out a streambed, slow but sure. I started calling her Ma one morning without meaning to. She was showing me how to knead bread, her sleeves rolled up, and I said, "Ma, is this too sticky?" She froze. Looked at me. Then she smiled. "No, sweetheart. That is just right." I felt my heart grow a size that day. I never called her anything else again. As for Silas, I had not yet called him Pa. But I started sitting closer at supper. I handed him tools before he asked. I rode beside him instead of behind. It was coming. The name. Like spring after a long frost. And I think he felt it too. It was a Sunday afternoon when the peace shattered. Clara was humming in the kitchen, stirring a pot of stew. Silas was on the porch sharpening his knife for fence work, and I was sitting at the table, tracing the letters in the tale-book Clara had given me. The knock came sharp and sudden. Not a neighbor's knock. Not a friend's. 3 raps. Hard. Angry. Silas stood slowly, wiped his blade, and opened the door. The man on the other side was lean, dirty, and familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. Jack Turner, my father. He looked thinner. Meaner. His eyes were still yellowed from drink, but he stood steady. Sober. "Silas Boone," he said, smiling a smile that never reached his eyes. "Heard you had my boy." My heart froze. My hands turned to ice. I could not breathe. Silas stepped forward, blocking the door. "He is not yours. He is by blood," my father said, spitting in the dirt. "You paid me for his time. That time is up." Clara appeared in the doorway, her hands clenched in her apron. Silas said, "You sold him. Like a sack of grain. You do not get to come back now and play father." My father's eyes moved to me. He grinned, and it made my skin crawl. "Eli," he said, voice syrupy. "Come on, boy. Time to come home." Home. That word twisted in my chest like a thorn. He took a step forward, but Silas moved between us again. "He is not going anywhere," Silas said, voice like gravel. "Law says he is mine," my father sneered. "A man's boy is his blood. And I got my rights." Clara said softly, "Not if the court say otherwise." My father pulled a paper from his coat, a custody writ, stamped and signed in dry hollow. "I cleaned up," he said proudly. "Been 6 months sober. Got witnesses. Got church papers. Even got a job fixing fences for the mayor's cousin." He slapped the paper into Silas's chest. "The judge gave me another chance. Said I could reclaim what I lost. And I'm here to collect." Silas's jaw clenched. Clara stepped closer to me, her hand hovering near mine. I could not speak. My voice had vanished. My feet were nailed to the floor. That night, the three of them argued long after dark. Voices rose, doors slammed, the front porch boards groaned under pacing boots. I sat on the hearth, arms wrapped around my knees, heart pounding like a drum. It felt like drowning. The next morning, Silas handed me a sack and said, "Pack your things." I looked up, eyes wide. "It is not over," he said. "But we will go to town. Speak to the judge. Fight this the right way." Clara came and wrapped a shawl around my shoulders. She kissed the top of my head and said, "We will not let you go without a fight, baby. I swear it." But inside me, something had already begun to break. Old fear came flooding back, stronger now because I knew what love felt like. And losing it felt worse than never having it at all. That night, I dreamed of the wagon again, the one I almost froze to death in years ago. Only this time, no prospector came. No coat covered me. I just sat in the cold, calling out for a father who never came back. The hearing was scheduled 3 days later. The judge was a woman, stern and gray-haired, with eyes like iron nails. She listened to both sides. My father showed letters from the preacher and a faded coin he claimed he kept to buy back his mistakes. Clara cried when she spoke. Told the judge I had learned to read. That I had begun to smile. Silas stood tall and said, "He was thrown away. But he is not trash. He is my son in every way that matters." The judge looked at me. "Eli," she said. "Do you want to go back to your birth father?" I opened my mouth. No sound came. She waited. My lips trembled. I want to stay. But the law is not always kind. And papers carry more weight than hearts. The judge ruled in favor of my father. Custody would return at month's end. When we got home, I went to the barn and punched the wall until my knuckles bled. Clara tried to hold me, but I pushed her away. I knew it, I yelled. I knew I was not meant to stay. Silas stood in the doorway, eyes dark. "You are not leaving because of us," he said. "You are leaving because the world is wrong." I screamed, "It does not matter. I am going back to hell, and no one can stop it." Then I ran. Out the barn. Past the chickens. Into the dark. I did not care where. All I knew was that the past had come back. And it wanted me. I did not run far, just far enough to disappear into the shadows and cry like a child again. The stars blinked overhead like cold witnesses. The wind cut through my shirt and reminded me I had no power. No say. Just papers and rules and a name I never chose. I curled under an old oak near the edge of Widow's Reach. My breath came in gulps. My hands shook. I was not scared of wolves or the cold. I was scared of going back. Of becoming what I had been. A ghost boy. A shadow. A stomach that ached from hunger and a heart that hurt from silence. I stayed out until morning. When I crept back, my fingers numb, Clara was sitting on the porch, wrapped in a quilt, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She did not scold. Did not ask. She opened her arms and I fell into them like I was 5 years old again. She rocked me slow, humming that same lullaby about rivers and stars. That day, I did not speak. Not at breakfast. Not at chores. Not even when Silas handed me the good boots and said, "You will need these for the walk to town." I just nodded, but inside I felt like something had died. That last week at Widow's Reach passed in silence. Clara braided my hair on the last night and said, "You are still mine. Always. Wherever you go." Silas gave me a coin. "Hide this," he said. Use it when you need to remember you were worth more than what he paid. Then the wagon came. My father stood beside it, looking smug, wearing a new vest and polished boots like he had earned something. "Ready, boy?" he said. I did not answer. I climbed in. Clara tried not to cry. Silas tipped his hat, jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. The ride back to Dry Hollow was the longest journey I had ever taken. Not for the distance, but for what it stole. When we reached the old shack he called a house, nothing had changed. The door still squeaked. The chimney still leaned. The floor still groaned like it did not want company. Inside, it smelled of mold and something sour. He showed me a cot. Said, "You know the rules. No noise after dark. No food until work is done." Just like before. The first night, I lay there staring at the rafters. And I realized, I was not the same boy. I had known warmth. Safety. Quiet dinners. A woman's hand in my hair and a man who watched me with steady pride. I had known family. This was a cage. And I had no voice here. Each day after that was a blur of ache. Fix the fence. Haul water. Scrub the boots. No thanks. No kindness. When I made a mistake, he tossed a boot at me. "You think you are too good now," he spat. "You got soft out there with that woman and her baked bread." I did not speak. But inside, the anger grew. One morning, he drank again. He said it was just one to take the edge off. But it turned into 3, then 4. He came home late and loud, banging pots and accusing me of stealing. When he raised his hand, I did not flinch. I looked him in the eye. He paused. Then muttered, "You think you are better than me." I said nothing. But maybe I did. Because love changes a boy. It plants something inside. Something that does not bow so easy. Later that night, I found the coin Silas had given me, hidden in my boot heel. I stared at it for hours, rubbing it between my fingers. It felt heavier than silver. It felt like promise. That was when I found the book Clara gave me, The Boy Who Found the Wind. I had hidden it beneath the cot, afraid he would burn it. I opened it. Read the first line. Then the second. And something in me woke up. I was not his anymore. Not really. I had been chosen. I had been loved. And I would not be caged again. Not for long. The morning it happened, the sky was red, fiery and strange, like the world was warning me something was coming. I had gone to the well before my father woke, just to breathe air that was not full of dust and drink. That was when I saw the corner of paper peeking from between the pages of The Boy Who Found the Wind. It was folded small, soft from wear. My fingers shook as I pulled it free. In Clara's neat, curved handwriting were 5 words. "If you ever get away." And below that, in a second hand, Silas's blocky, spare print. Willow Bend. South of the bend tree. We will be waiting. My chest tightened. My eyes blurred. They had known. They had not just hoped I would stay, they had planned for what might happen if I could not. And now I had a choice. Stay. Break slowly. Turn into a man like him. Or leave. Risk the dark, the cold, the road, and run toward something that might still love me. That night, my father drank deep and passed out in his chair. I waited until the moon rose. I packed only what mattered, Clara's letter, Silas's coin, the green tail book, and the boots I had almost grown into. I crept out quiet as snow, past the door that never shut right, through the brush and back into the night. The road to Willow Bend was rough. I walked fast at first, then slower when the ache came. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every coyote cry like a ghost from my past. I followed the stream, just like Silas had taught me. Always south, past the bend tree. By dawn, my legs trembled, and the cold bit into my fingertips. But then I saw it. A plume of smoke in the distance. Faint. Thin. But real. I limped toward it, heart pounding. And there, just beyond the ridge, was the cabin. Clara's goats bleated nearby. The porch held the rocking chair I remembered. I stepped into the clearing, knees shaking. And then I saw them. Silas, standing like he had been carved from the ground itself. Clara, stepping forward, her hands to her mouth, eyes wide and wet. I did not speak. I could not. I just fell to my knees. Clara was beside me in a breath, wrapping me in her shawl, kissing my hair. "You came back," she whispered over and over. "You came back." Silas crouched down, hand on my shoulder. "You are safe now," he said, voice low. "You are home." I wept. Loud, messy sobs that cracked open all the pain I had stuffed down. And they held me. They did not ask how I got there. They did not ask why I left. They just wrapped me in warmth, carried me inside, and fed me stew that tasted like salvation. Later, by the fire, Clara handed me a dry shirt. Silas brought my boots in from the porch. "You rode that old nag 2 counties over," he said. Surprised she made it. I blinked. She did not. I walked. Clara gasped. "All that way?" I nodded. I had to. Silas looked at me long and hard, then said, "Then you have earned the right to stay." Clara took my hand. "This time," she said, "we go to court. Our way. The right way." And we did. The days that followed were quiet, but not with fear. They were full of planning, of soft courage and steady hands. Clara wrote letters to the town council and the judge herself. Silas rode into Dry Hollow and spoke to the preacher, the blacksmith, even Miss Greta from the saloon. And every time someone asked, "Why do you care so much about that boy?" he answered the same way. "Because he is mine." Not, "I paid for him." Not, "I took him in." Just mine. I had never been anyone's before. Not like that. The court date was set 2 weeks out. In the meantime, Silas took me to town and had me measured for a jacket. Said I ought to stand in front of a judge looking like I belonged to something. Clara coached me on how to speak clear, even when my throat shook. "You do not need to sound like a preacher," she told me. "You just need to speak the truth." I practiced every night by firelight, reading the lines I had written in the back of my tailbook. I was sold. But I was also saved. I was beaten. But I have also been loved. And I choose love. One night, Clara took my hands in hers and said, "Eli, you are not the same boy who came to us afraid of his own name. You have grown taller," she smiled. "But more than that, you have grown roots. You know where you belong now." Silas added, "And sometimes, the strongest trees are the ones that got bent early and still stood straight." I tucked their words into my chest like armor. When the day came, I wore the new jacket, boots polished by Clara's hands. The courtroom smelled like dust and old paper. My father was there, arms crossed, jaw tight. He had no preacher this time. No letters of support. Just empty pride. Clara sat beside me. Silas stood behind us like a stone wall. The judge entered, same woman, but her eyes seemed softer somehow. She looked at me and said, "Eli, we are here because you made a choice." I nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "Tell me why." I stood, knees shaking. Then I opened my tailbook. I read. I was sold for a silver coin in a saloon. My father said I ate too much. Said I was a burden. But I was taken in by a man who never raised his voice. Who gave me boots and taught me how to ride. And a woman who sang to me and told me I mattered. I learned to read. I learned to smile. I learned to sleep without fear. And I ran, not to escape, but to go home. This is my home now. These are my people. This is my choice. The room was still. The judge leaned forward. You understand that if I grant this, you may never see your birth father again? I looked at the man who had once traded me for whiskey. And I said, he made that choice long before I did. The judge looked down at the papers. Then back at me. In the eyes of the law, she said, you are still young. But in the eyes of this court, you have spoken with more courage than most grown men. She turned to Clara and Silas. Do you intend to make this boy your own? Legally, completely? Silas answered first. We do. Clara squeezed my hand. We already have. The judge nodded. Then it is done. A gavel hit the table. And the weight lifted from my chest like a bird taking flight. I turned to Clara. Is it real? She was crying. It is real. Silas put a hand on my shoulder. Welcome home, son. And for the first time, I said it. Out loud. Thank you, Pa. Have you ever had to fight for where you belong? Tell me your story in the comments below. After the court ruling, life did not become perfect. But it became mine. I woke each morning to the scent of bacon and the sound of Clara humming. She had begun wearing her hair down more often. Said it made her feel like herself again. Silas and I rode the fence line together most days. He showed me how to track cattle, mend brakes, and read the sky before a storm. But what changed most was me. I no longer flinched at loud noises. I no longer slept with my boots beside the bed in case I had to run. And I began to laugh, easy, full, and without looking over my shoulder. Clara added my name to the family Bible, written in her soft hand. Eli Boone, she wrote. Born of hardship. Chosen in love. We built new shelves for books. A reading corner. A place for chess by the fire. I started writing stories in my notebook, about boys who flew, girls who healed animals, men who chose kindness over fists. Sometimes, Silas would sit by me at the table and just watch me write. Not reading. Just watching. I asked him once, why do you stare like that? He said, because I still cannot believe someone tried to throw away a boy like you. One evening, Clara sat me down with a fresh shirt and a comb. We are going to church, she said. Why? Because I want folks to see what love built. That Sunday, we walked into Dry Hollow's white chapel side by side. The pews creaked as we sat. Eyes turned. Whispers rose. Miss Greta caught my eye and gave me a nod. The preacher cleared his throat before beginning and said, "We are joined today by the Boone family." He said it so plain, like it had always been that way. I smiled at that word, family. It was not just a wish anymore. It was a truth with a name. After the service, a little boy came up to me outside. "You really live with them now?" he asked. "I do." "What is it like?" I looked at Silas, who was talking to the preacher. At Clara, who was tucking a flower behind a little girl's ear. "It is like waking up after a long storm," I said. And realizing the sun was always going to come back. That week, I asked Silas if I could help train the new colt. He raised an eyebrow. "Think you are ready?" "I do." He handed me the reins and said, "Then show me." The colt bucked, wild and stubborn. But I stayed steady. Soft words. Gentle hands. Patience. Just like Clara taught me to read. Just like Silas taught me to trust. And when the colt calmed, I whispered, you are safe now. Just like I was. That evening, I wrote something new in my tale book. Pain does not vanish. But love makes it carryable. Clara read it, pressed her lips to my forehead, and whispered, "That is your story now." She was right. I was no longer the boy sold for a coin. I was Eli Boone, son of a quiet man and a brave woman. And no paper or past could take that from me. Summer came in full that year, bright, bold, and wide as the prairie. The grass reached past my boots. The horses drank from the creek. And the ranch buzzed with life, like the land itself knew something had been made right. But not all stories stay buried. Word came that my father had fallen ill in a boarding house south of Dry Hollow. Drank himself near to death. No one claimed him. The mayor's cousin, his old employer, sent word to Silas, unsure where else to turn. Clara sat me down gently and said, "You do not have to go. But you can. If you need to." I did not answer at first. I looked out the window at the horizon I had once walked toward, scared and alone. Then I said, "I think I need to see it." Silas nodded. "We will go together." The ride was quiet. Not heavy, just thoughtful. The boarding house was gray and leaning, tucked between dry hills. Inside, the air was sour with sickness and sweat. He lay on a cot by the window, skin sunken, beard unkempt, eyes dull. A shell of the man who had once thrown boots at my back. When he saw me, he blinked like he was unsure if I was real. "Eli," he rasped. I nodded. Silas stood by the door, arms crossed. "You came," my father whispered. "You shouldn't have." I sat beside the bed. I needed to. He coughed hard, then wiped his mouth with a stained cloth. "You look strong," he said. "Better fed." "I am," I answered. He looked away. "I do not remember much about selling you. Just that I needed the coin. I was drowning. You threw me away." He nodded. "I did." We sat in silence. Then he added, "I thought about you. Every night. But shame, it's a kind of sickness too." "I know," I said. He turned toward me. "Do you hate me?" I stared at the man who had bruised me, ignored me, handed me to a stranger without a blink. I thought of Clara's lullabies. Silas's silent strength. The bread, the books, the coin in my pocket. "No," I said quietly. "I do not hate you." His lips trembled. "Then what do you feel?" I swallowed. "Pity. Sadness. But not hate." He nodded, tears sliding from the corners of his eyes. "You always were better than me." "No," I said. "I just had someone who showed me how to be." He closed his eyes. I stood. "I forgive you," I said. "But I do not forget. And I will not come back." He opened his mouth, but no sound came. And I turned away. Outside, the air smelled of dust and sage. Silas placed a hand on my shoulder. "You all right?" he asked. I nodded. "I left something behind in there. But I brought something stronger with me." We rode home under the setting sun. And I knew, deep in my bones, that I was free. Not because he let me go. But because I chose to live. Years passed like pages turning in a well-loved book. The ranch grew. So did I. We added a new barn, a proper schoolroom for the neighbor children, and even a second porch where Clara liked to shell peas in the evening light. I took to calling her Mom more naturally than breathing. And Pa, well, he earned that name more times than I could count. He never said much. But every time I fixed a fence right or led a skittish colt without fear, he would give me that quiet nod. And I knew it meant, "I see you. I am proud." At 16, I started teaching the smaller boys in town how to read. Clara stood in the doorway every time, arms folded, smiling with that soft pride only a mother can wear. One of the boys asked once, "Were you always good at reading?" I laughed and shook my head. No. But someone believed I could be. I wrote letters for folks who could not spell. I read Bible verses at Sunday service. I even wrote a short story about a runaway boy who became a rancher. Clara cried when she read it. Said, "That is you, Eli. That is who you became." At 19, I met a girl named Lila, quiet eyes, strong hands, laughter like river water. She was the first one I told the whole story to, about the coin, the cot, the court. She did not look away. She said, "You are proof love can unmake pain." We married under the same tree I had once cried beneath as a child. Pa gave me his father's watch. Clara wrapped her mother's shawl around my bride's shoulders. When our daughter was born, we named her Grace. Because that is what saved me. Clara sang the lullaby to her, about rivers and stars. And I whispered to my daughter one night, "You come from pain, but you are made of love." Grace had Clara's eyes and Pa's quiet soul. She grew up on horseback and poetry. On warmth and worth. She never flinched when someone raised their voice, not because she was tough, but because she had never known fear in a house meant to be home. And when she asked me once, "What were you like when you were a boy?" I told her the truth. I was lost. Until someone found me. Some stories begin with loss. Some begin with violence, with silence, with a child standing barefoot in the shadow of a broken man. But the ones that matter, the ones worth remembering, are the stories that rise from those ashes. The stories that say, "You are not where you came from. You are who you choose to become." I was sold for a silver coin. I was left in the dust without a name worth holding. But love, quiet, steady love, found me in the wilderness. And it taught me how to stand again. Silas never said, "I love you," out loud. But he did not have to. He showed it in every meal, every lesson, every time he let me fail and still waited for me to rise. Clara, she said it with every gentle touch, every story, every lullaby. And when they both chose me, when they wrote my name beside theirs, something inside me healed. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is remembering with grace. It is saying, "You hurt me, but you do not own me anymore." To anyone out there who has felt discarded. To anyone who has been made to feel small, invisible, unwanted. I want you to know this. You are not your pain. You are not the worst thing someone did to you. You are not the name someone screamed or the silence someone left you in. You are what you fight for. You are what you build. You are who you choose to love, and who chooses to love you back. And sometimes, family is not who you come from. It is who comes for you. Speech Balloon, did this story touch your heart? Have you ever felt chosen when you thought you were forgotten? I would love to hear from you below. Tell me where you are watching from, and share what part of Eli's story stays with you the most. Thank you for riding this trail with me. Until next time, hold tight to the ones who stay.